So I set out to learn this samba piano rhythm, and usually I'm quite good at rhythmic stuff in general. But this one I seem to struggle with quite a bit, and I couldn't get it down. And I couldn't figure out why I had such a hard time. It felt like there were some other rhythm that was so deeply ingrained in my muscle memory that I always made the same mistakes over and over again, as if these two rhythms were competing against each other. So that really made me think why it is so hard for me to get it right. And I knew that I had to change my approach on how I usually learn my rhythmic parts because I really was not going anywhere with this one. And I have read and I have listened and I have watched a ton of different sources on how to become a better learner and how to learn things faster. So I thought it really is time for me to make use of all of this knowledge that I have already gotten about this topic over the course of a few years. And as a result, I came up with this method of visualizing and conceptualizing rhythms, I think more clearly and more understandable. So let me show you what I mean exactly. So this is the rhythm that I wanted to learn. It is often found in Latin American music, and it's not the most complex rhythm by any means, but it's definitely not basic either. So let me play it for you. So my problem was that at the end here, I always mixed something up. I made an error and it made me quite frustrated. So I had to change my approach. And what I did is I said I wanted to break this rhythm down, because usually what I did is I thought of this rhythm as being the length of these two bars and then it loops over again. But if you think about it, there are quite a lot of elements that you have to keep in mind if you view this entire two bars in its entirety. So I wanted to break this down into smaller loops or smaller rhythmic components. And I identified where I can make these breaks in the rhythm to split it into individual parts. I identified these three components in my rhythm. So this one, and then this, and then this. So for me, it felt like there was a nice space that separated them. And what I did next is to say that I wanted to separate them visually as well. And in Ableton, this is how I did it. I duplicate this 3 times because I have 3 components. I give each of them a different color. And then I deactivated the notes that aren't part of my individual part. So I have this. And then if I highlight all of them, you can see that they are visually now separated by their colors. And this one makes it way more distinct to the eye. And you can do this. This is just how you can do it in Ableton. If you do it in another software, you probably will find a way to make these distinction. It doesn't even have to be in colors, it could be in brightness as well, or anything that makes you clearly see the separation between these components. And now that you see all of this, you can actually just spend some time practicing these parts individually, slowly and individually. And given that they are so small, it's very easy for you to understand what exactly is going on in this rhythm. So the first one is as simple as this. And then take some time to understand what actually is happening here. And really listen closely to what it sounds like and look at it visually as well. Try to connect it. Try to connect what it sounds like with what your hands are doing and what it looks like visually. And once you feel like you understood what is happening, you can move on to the next one. And this one sounds like this. Okay? So very simple. It's just basically 3 parts. It's this, then this, then this. And once you have done this, you can then move on to the next one. And it sounds like this. And now all of a sudden you have these very bite-sized little components, and your next job is to simply, once you get a feel of how they sound like, to simply connect them to our 2-bar loop, so that in the end it sounds like this. And when I play this, really listen back to these individual components that you've just identified. And this way of learning music, by breaking it down into these small bite-sized parts that you can easily understand, is extremely effective, because it represents better how your brain actually represents memories. So let me give you an example. For example, the numbers 2 and 3, they are stored in your memory as 2 separate entities. But then again, 23 is also a separate entry. It is not going to be just a composite memory of your knowledge of 2 and your 3 combined. But it's easy enough for us to understand. It's simple enough, it's small enough, if you want, to have an entire separate, entry in our memory. But the higher you go with your numbers, the longer the numbers get, you struggle to represent them as a singular entity in your brain. So for example, the number 56,730,103. It's even in the way that we say this number. We think of this number as a composite between the 56 in the million, then the 730 in the thousands, and the 103 in the hundreds. And it is exactly the same principle that applies here with our rhythm. Because to understand this rhythm as a whole, it takes a lot more effort. But once you start to break it down into these individual parts, you can instantly feel how it becomes way easier to understand and what this rhythm is actually made of, like with our number example. And there's one more additional thing that makes this method even more effective, because you combine a lot of different senses, a lot of different sensory input to your learning process, and you start to connect them. Because when learning, it's always a very good idea to incorporate as many senses as you can, and this goes for things other than music as well, because that way you can really form the most robust memories. Because you can pay attention to how it feels like in your hands to play this rhythm. You can pay attention to what these individual components sound like and identify them this way. And now you can even, what they look like by separating them into these colors. And yeah, you can taste the rhythm, because these are the colors of Italy. And I don't know, you probably know what Italy tastes like. But no, really, it changed the way I approached learning. And I think it made me a better piano player as a result. So, give it a try and let me know what you think. Bye-bye.